Okay. Live. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Mental Moms podcast. Thank you to everybody who has watched our first episode and who is now here at our second episode. We started a little bit later today. We're having technical difficulties and time mismanagement as per usual. With mental mothers. So anyway, today is our second episode. Thanks everybody for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But last week, we kind of started off our podcast by letting you guys know about our background, how we became friends, why we started this podcast. And we want to do a continuation of that, as well as kind of joining us in learning about us. You know, Areli mentioned last week about her, oh, she went away. She'll be back. I know she'll be back. She's talking to us about her, newfound path into being a single mother, going back to school, working. So there's a lot for us to cover. And when she jumps back on, we'll get right into it. But for now, I'll definitely, let's get this going again. So, oh, now there's two Arelis. Let's remove that one. Yes, let's remove that one. All right, there you are. I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
All right. There we go. It froze and then
Life, yeah.
anyways, we're back.
Yeah. So I was just giving like our intro and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to just pick up from last episode in regards to how we met and why we started this podcast and why it was important for us to kind of create this community where we can just kind of chat about all things mental health, relationships. I mean, just kind of being silly as well as learning how to grow from you know, our personal stories, because that's really where so much of our wisdom comes from, right? It's from failed relationships or failed attempts. And I really feel like whenever we use that word, it's such a negative connotation because then we'd never want to try anything because we don't want to fail. But a lot of the times, those failures, quote unquote, I mean, okay, they can be failures, but then we can learn so much from it, like what not to do next time and how to just grow from those experiences. So you're back. I'm glad you're back. Um, so I don't know, Aurelie, for you, like, why do you think it was important for you to start this podcast? Like, what was an internal motivator for you?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things, actually. You were part of it. I remember we were talking about you reading my birth chart.
Oh, yes,
And
because I do those.
yeah, right. And so also medium Becky K.
He's awesome.
Yes. And also my pastor, everyone, all three of you said the same thing at some point, which was like, you should share your story. Like, you told me actually to start a journal,
Yes.
and start writing down, my emotions and everything. I think because in the beginning it was really hard. So I was like, and it was like, just write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know Medium Becky told me, I see you helping other women through your story. And I told
Mm-hmm.
her about our podcast and she said, start it up again.
Yeah.
Let's
And
go.
just for
You know,
context, Aurelie and I are both very into spirituality, I think on different
yes,
ends. Well, I think, you are religious, but then you also believe in the spiritual realm, as I do. I think we believe in the fact that people have gifts that are given and they can sometimes, talk to people who have passed on or kind of understand what's unseen a lot better than others. Like you or I, we see what we see, and that's kind of what it is. And we do believe in like strong intuition. And so Becky K is a psychic that I met at a retreat like 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, which I can't even believe it's been that long. But I met her. She was someone's friend that I knew, and then her and I became friendly. And then for Mother's Day, I think it was like 2 years ago, I got you a reading with her, because you've gone through some, life challenges that we'll get to. And then you spoke to her, and she was like a pivotal component of telling you like, hey, like, and it's funny because when I did your birth chart, because I'm also into astrology, yeah, hoo-ha. One of the things that I did tell you is like, hey, you're a public persona. You're someone that needs to be out there talking about your life, talking about the challenges that you've been through, and how you've grown, because
Yeah.
every day is a chance to heal and every day is a chance to mourn. But it's like, how do we get up and how do we show up every day and every morning for ourselves and the people who love us? And so continue.
Yes. So I remember talking to you a lot actually when I first became a single mother. I was, we were talking a lot, and then you were like, why don't we start the podcast again? And I was like, yeah, but you know what? Why don't we start it? And it could be like a journal of my journey, with all this going on. And it's actually helped a lot. It's kind of like a place where I can vent
Hmm.
and people can hear my experience and then either relate or kind of say like, oh geez, like, well, if she's doing it, why can't I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um, so basically that's right now, this is why we started the podcast, but in all reality, this is like kind of like a safe place for everyone to kind of vent, you
Yeah.
know and
Yeah.
hear each other out.
And it's like hangout time for you and I.
Yeah, kind of hangout time
Yeah.
for me right
So,
before my daughter gets home,
right.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
today
Yeah.
she
She
comes
comes
back
home.
home. So,
Yeah. And this is right before I go pick up my son, from school. So it's like it is hangout time because I get to talk to one of like my longest standing friends who, like we said in the last episode, we've known each other for like 20 plus years. And we've gone through a
yes.
lot together and then separately, and then we've come back together and just really supported each other through so much, like I really feel like there have been pivotal moments in our lives where we kind of just come back and you're like, dude, I understand you better, or like vice versa, or whatever it may be. But I really do feel like this is, yeah, like a safe place for us to just kind of chat and talk like girls and women and just human beings that are just doing our best to kind of navigate what life throws at us. And speaking about navigating what life throws at us, in last week's episode, we also discussed that you are now not only a single mom and working, is it full time or part time?
It's part-time.
You're working part time, but now you're going to school. You just started
Right.
school.
hmm It actually got backed up a little, so I'm going to start officially on the 29th.
Oh,
It's okay. At least
what
I'm going to
happened?
start. So the first issue was that the classes weren't getting filled up in time. And then the second issue was she was short on material because our tuition covers our material, most of it.
Yeah.
So she's called me on Saturday and said, I'm so sorry. We're officially starting on the 29th. And I was like, okay, cool, as long as we start. Because I really was about to say, just give me my money back. Let me look for another school.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Um,
Yeah.
so yes, and so I think what I was saying last time was that this is really where it begins. It wasn't
Mhm.
um
The healing ends. Yeah.
right,
It's
it's
like,
not when the healing ends. It's basically when I start my journey towards getting to my goals,
right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is the part of the story where you put that work in, right? So, like, in
Right.
every, like, the way I see things sometimes is like we're all our own main character in our personal movie, right? Like we're the main character in our personal movie.
Exactly.
And there's always like stories that we're playing out, right? Like there's always there's always an unfolding of something that's going on. And so I think in this chapter of your life, the main story is I've become a single parent and now I'm kind of getting back on my feet. Because the last chapter was becoming a mother and being a stay-at-home mom and maybe, limiting yourself for your family because sometimes as like moms and stuff, like we have to make sacrifices. And at this
Yes.
point, the gift that your ex gave you was being able to leave that behind and say, I'm moving forward in this life path journey of mine, and I'm going at it like in a big way. And this
Right.
is where, this is where the hard work, it's like where where the wheels hit the pavement, you get going
Yes.
in terms of being single, being a mom, and going back to school and work.
Right. It's kind of like, yeah, like you said, this is where we take off. This the driver ed is over. You got your license. Now it's only you, dude. And
Buckle up,
it's
baby. We're going 100 miles per
yeah.
hour.
And the more I go through my journey, the more I start to realize how much I needed to be doing this. Like I think since my daughter was months old, I feel like maybe even since then we kind of
We intuitively, instinctually
yes,
knew. Yeah.
we kind of we were just both afraid to like kind of like end it. And
Yeah.
so I think things happen for a reason. Something had to happen for us to say, okay, this is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the more I go through this journey, of course it has anxiety, it has fears, it has it's
Of
even sad
course.
still, even if
Yeah.
it wasn't like, even if I wasn't happy anymore, of course it's sad. Like I was telling my little sister yesterday, like, hey, is it weird that sometimes I get memories of like when I used to live in Long Beach and I get bummed out? And she goes,
Mhm.
it's not weird. It's, because
Normal.
that was right. Once upon a time when we were still in Long Beach, we were both still trying to be a family. And so, yeah, it,
Yeah. I
it
think
has
there's
its ups and
something,
downs,
yeah,
but
definitely. I
it's
think there's
definitely
some,
like, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go
It
ahead.
has its up and downs, but I
Yeah.
think in all reality, I can honestly wholeheartedly say that I feel the healthiest. I know I can be happier, but that's part of my journey. But I actually have been happier than when I was in that relationship. I'm kind
Yeah.
of more motivated. I'm ready. I'm breathing.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is I think that sometimes people are very unrealistic about the fact that you have to mourn a relationship. You have to mourn
Right.
the death and the transition and the transformation of a relationship, especially when you have a child with someone. Like you even said it, like I think both him and I were probably no longer like happy per se, but we were trying to keep our family together because I think that's kind of what we're conditioned to do, right? And you want to fight for something because you never want to look back and be like, damn, I regret that. And I think there are some people who have left relationships that they're like, I didn't try. I didn't try. But I think you and your ex really, I think you guys tried to an extent. I think more so maybe like one party versus the other, because then what you said is like, the other person really made it happen to where it had to end. And
Right.
even then you've shared, and then I even double thought that like maybe we can work on it. Um, but mourning the end of something that you thought was your forever and your home, that's sad.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of time. It's like the cycle of grief, right? Like you don't go from like sad to like I'm over it. There's dips and there's
Right.
valleys and there's there's bargaining, there's anger, there's this, there's that, then there's acceptance. And even though you've gone through that, maybe at another point in your life, you're going to go back to anger, or like if maybe we could have made it work, that bargaining. And so I think when people are like, oh, just be done with it already, like that's not how life works. We'd like
Right.
for it to be that way, but it's just not.
Believe me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so I feel like what I can say to other women, but everyone's different, because you know what? I have met, I want to say about a couple of women who are going through similar situations. One of them in particular is she's really going through it, because she was she was very much in love still. And she was, it just out of the blue, it kind of knocked her in the face. And so everyone's different. I can relate to her in the sense that, dang, it just, it ended.
You have
But I don't
compassion for her because
passion.
she didn't see it coming. Like for you and your ex, like there were signs.
There were signs, and
But
like
you
I
were,
said,
yeah.
yeah, like I said, we were both kind of like, something has to happen for us to be like, we're
We're
done.
both just gonna stay here until
So, you know what
someone,
I mean?
yeah, yeah.
And so, but I can't really um relate in the fact that she's really heartbroken, and it's really hard for her to, you know, day by day kind of even co-parent, because it's still very sad. And so in that part, I'm just kind of like, hang in there, day by day. But you know and so, but we still have some kind of similarities. And so, what I was kind of telling her, just kind of take it day by day, maybe even hour by hour, because
Yeah, that's all you
sometimes,
can do sometimes. And
yeah,
you might not be able to relate in terms of you were like, after my ex did whatever, it's like I was sad for my family, like the
mhm,
breaking up of my family versus like I know that I wasn't like in love with him in that way anymore. So it
right.
was like, all right, like this sucks, this is sad. Um, but like I can get over you. Like I'm halfway there already, kind of a
Right,
thing.
yeah,
And so I think you're right. I think everybody's journey is completely different. Everybody's circumstances is totally different. So again, it's unrealistic to be like, oh, well, I got over it. You will too. Like, yeah, of course this person will, but it's gonna be a little bit more of a like soul searching perhaps in terms of like love and heartache and what that means, versus for you, I don't want to speak for you in terms of like what it's forced you to do, but I would imagine it was like, okay, there's no limitations on me anymore in terms of what I can do for me and how I'm going to take
right,
action.
right, exactly. I think the only thing right now is the fact that we do have to still co-parent. I do very much have to include him in, big decisions with my daughter.
Yeah.
But so far we've actually kind of gotten the co-parenting down a little bit. We've been getting along quite well. um I will say though, this is a person that once upon a time I did love. I did I did see myself with, in the future. And so I'm not going to sit here and say it's not like, it's whatever. But the whole him being in another relationship, everything, it does kind of sting a little. Not in the fact that, oh, I wish it was me. It's just kind of weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We weren't
Background and
even,
context, you guys stopped being together because he started being with someone else.
he started being with someone else
Yeah.
within the relationship, if you can call it a relationship.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
someone stepped out. Backstory
yeah,
in
someone
terms of
stepped out
like
of the
what,
relationship.
yeah.
And so, that whole like, dang, right away is kind of weird. It's just weird. It's not like it hurts. It's just weird.
But
But
like you said, it stings. Like, dang,
yeah, it's
okay.
like, all right,
Yeah.
um but I don't know why it kind of motivates me more to kind of make myself happy, because um I can probably start dating too if I wanted to, but that's not what
That's not
I
what growth is.
yes,
I'm
you
just
kind
gonna
of,
tell y'all one little tidbit, okay? Just from my personal experience as well as like therapy experience. When you go from one relationship right into the next one and like there's no time in between, there's probably I can't speak for everybody, but there's probably a lot that you still have to learn on your own before a relationship can be successful. It's
right.
like you're dragging your BS from one relationship to the next, and you're never allowing yourself time to dump, release, and then move on in a fresh, with a fresh slate with another person when you do things like that. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
emotionally, you guys could have, like not been connected, but to not have time for yourself to be like, okay, that was a long-term relationship where I had XYZ, whatever, and you don't allow yourself that time, there will not be a successful relationship in your future. I've never seen it. So,
I've never seen it either. And one thing I am trying to do for the first time in my life, and this is all because I have a daughter now, and if I get dragged, I'm not only dragging myself, I'm dragging her
right,
with me. So
right.
this is the first time, and this is why my journey is kind of a little bit more
It's meaningful, like on
it
another
meaningful
level.
and challenging because I've had to sit with myself and pick out my red flags. Like this is this is what I did wrong in my
Yeah.
relationship that ended. So because I can sit here and play victim and say, "Oh, I got cheated on, blah blah," but no, it's I contributed to
Many
why it
things,
didn't.
yeah, work out.
Yes, and so yes, at the end, I was giving it my all, and I was, whatever. But it starts from the beginning. Everything starts from the beginning, you know. So this is why it's more challenging and more meaningful because I've had to sit with myself and say, these are the things that you did wrong. I hate using that word, but these are the things where you still
You can
needed to
improve
grow.
on.
Yes. And so that's what I want to work on because if I do start another relationship, I don't just want to date around.
Yeah.
I want it to be meaningful. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, right? Like part of growth, which is what we're discussing, is just learning our own pitfalls and what we do to self-sabotage ourselves and relationships, right?
Mhm.
And you're right. Those things happen from the very beginning and they become more and more pronounced as time goes on, right? Because we're no longer in that puppy love stage. It's like it's kind of in your face. And for you, I know this is something we've talked a lot about, is just like, man, I'm a toxic person too, because we all are, like in relationships and whatever. Like we've done things to people where it was like, damn, I can see where that was messed up or X, Y, and Z. And until you can self-reflect like that and be brutally honest with yourself, you're not really growing
Right.
because you're passing off the buck to another person. That wasn't my fault. I was victimized. And then that gives you, when you become a victim, you don't give yourself the time and the power to say, no, I'm going to do it differently next time. Because when I start acting like this, when I start doing this, when it's up to me then to communicate, whatever it may be, right? A, B,
Right.
C, D, E, F, G. Um, and you're saying like it's more meaningful and difficult because now my child is involved.
Right.
My child is like part of the mix. So yeah, I can go ahead and go start dating, but what does that do for my personal growth in terms of one, getting on my feet and then really truly knowing myself, and what I want in a relationship, and then what kind of man I want to bring around my daughter,
Exactly.
because your child
And
is going to see that too.
exactly. And most of all, what do I bring that is going to fortify and solidify whatever relationship I begin, you
Right.
know?
Like, how am
And that's
I creating value for other people as well as
right.
myself?
And in a
Yeah.
sense, become more picky because You know, whoever I in the future, whoever I do decide to date has to understand that my time goes to my daughter first. And then we can figure, we're adults, we can figure it out. You know what I mean? But they, and I also, they have to kind of maybe understand that they won't be meeting her until I can truly say that it may be going somewhere, because it's, I, through experience, you know, watching family members, you know, people come in and out of their kids' lives, and that's kind of very toxic to the kids. I don't know. It just,
Yeah.
I don't think it's very healthy for them.
Yeah. There's a sense of instability in that,
Hmm.
like, of course, like you can't rule out, I thought this person was the right person and we dated and then it didn't work out. And then I have to have that conversation with my child, right?
Right.
Because, like, hey, this person was here and now they're not here. When you date as a parent and you start bringing people around your children, there's an added layer of responsibility that you just kind of have to take on as the parent, in knowing,
Right.
hey, if this works, amazing. If this doesn't work, I have to discuss this with my child, because
Right.
then when there's no continuity in things, children are like, hey, I'm kind of feeling anxious. Like, there's changes. And people are like, oh, well, children are very small. But then you're conditioning them for that change
Hmm.
constantly and instability. And then you're creating something else down the line for them to be like, oh, yeah, this is how it goes in relationships.
Right. And that's kind of, I didn't grow up with my parents being in different relationships constantly,
Yeah.
but I did grow up with people constantly coming and going, you know, because my parents would rent out the extra rooms and the living room. So I grew up in a sense where, like, I didn't have any privacy, and there was always a new person living here or going or living or going.
Mm,
And so it was very, like, it didn't feel
chaotic.
like, yeah, it was chaotic because it was
That's
like,
so
who else is gonna,
interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting you're
yeah,
saying that because there's a comparison. Even though your parents were not doing that in their relationship, they were doing that in your home. And I
right.
understand that because that happened for me growing up, where sometimes it's exhausting. Like, who else you start becoming apathetic about the people around you. And so imagine that's just us growing up with people freaking in and out of our house. But then imagine, like, my mom and dad are bringing all these people around all the time and it doesn't work out. And then it's like,
What the heck, right.
yeah, it creates
It's,
a level of apathy and almost like, oh, like, I guess that's just how it is. Like, people are
yeah,
not permanent in your life.
and it's, yeah, and the whole instability because they were coming into our house to live, and it's like, okay, well, I got to share, you know, this bathroom with this new person, and they're in my kitchen, and you know, it's kind of, it's weird, like, hey, welcome,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you know, don't eat my
uncomfortable.
cereal.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, I understand that. I lived similarly up to a certain point in my life. So I get that.
Right.
It's exhausting.
So it's very challenging, but I'm ready. I'm kind of, I kind of can't wait. I kind of am like, okay, let's get through this. Fast forward, we're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, focus on the fast forward part. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that's just me. I think that's Aries energy where we're very impatient.
I was gonna
Like, I want
say,
to,
what about, why is it like, I can understand most likely, but what is it about the fast forward that maybe it's actually okay, well, like, learn to slow down.
I think for me, learning to kind of slow down means take every little bit. Like right now with your journey, Areli, whatever you're feeling, soak it in because you've always wanted to be in the fast pace. And that's where we forget, oh, that's right. I didn't pay attention
That's
to
where I
that because I
crashed
wanted
and
to get
burned.
here really quick.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a curve
And
that I went
it didn't,
over.
exactly. I was going 50 and I was like, we can do this. And then I flipped, you know? So it's kind of like just soak it in. Just trust the process.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a few sayings in life where like you kind of hate them, but you understand them because it
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, trust the process, right? Like it's
Time
like,
heals all wounds.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it's like, yes, there's like a truth to that, but it's also so, I think for people like us, where it's like we just want to get there now, and I'm sure that's most people, like impatience, that's really where the learning begins of like learning how to slow down. And like even with school, like, okay, it's not happening yet. It will happen. In the meantime, I can work on X, Y, or Z, or I can just relax before I'm so busy all the time.
Right. Exactly. And
Because
it's
like,
just like it's a drag, but it's I know it's going to be worth it in the end.
yeah, yeah,
I'm just kind of like, you know,
yeah,
I'm barely getting like, I have my own income now, which is great, but it's like, come on. But before you know it, also before you trust the process, and before you know it, you're halfway. Like right now, I think
yeah,
we on our first episode, we were like, holy crap, it's been like 4 months, and it
yeah.
still feels like I'm just beginning, but it's really been a while now.
Yeah. Yeah, it hasn't been last week. And 4 months is a short period of time, but in those 4 months, you've done a lot. Like you moved
Right,
out, you got yourself, connected to your support system. You were able to find like like stable and like comforting childcare for your child. You were able to get yourself a part-time job. Like you were able to
right,
connect yourself to school. Like in only 4 months, you were able to do that much.
right, exactly. And then um with all this support,
Yeah.
but even with all the support, Katie, remember I told you I felt really alone?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of weird. Isn't it
Yeah.
weird how you people are really truly alone going through a process like mine?
You know what I think is so interesting about that? It's like everybody truly feels alone though, no matter what process they're going through, you know? And I think that's where pain and suffering comes from. Because like if you look back even at like your sister, your older sister, or your mom, they went through something similar.
Absolutely.
And so even though they felt alone, were they?
No.
Right. And so it's like you're going through it and you feel alone, but are you?
Yeah, I think it's the whole you're alone with your feelings, but you
Right.
truly
You
really
have
do
to
have
learn, yeah, you have to learn how to manage those feelings. And that's the
it.
part
Right.
that can feel lonely. But I bet you anything, if you spoke to your older sister and you said, some days I feel like this, she'd be like, I know exactly what you mean.
And she does, because I actually spoke to her right before my first day of work, and I told her, you know what, I'm very nervous. I've never been away from my daughter. Like, I'm scared of how she's going to react, this and that. And so my sister's very emotional. You know her. My older sister's very emotional. So she started crying. And she was like,
She's like, let
I
me cry
totally
for
get it.
you.
Right. Everything you're feeling, I felt it too. She
Yeah.
was like, and it's so hard, but they'll do so good. She couldn't be in better hands. Like, we're family.
Yeah.
At least you don't have to drop her off in daycare where they don't even know what kind of cereal she likes.
Right.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
And she did really good. I don't know if I told you, like, my daughter, she was sending me pictures where my daughter is like playing. She's fine. She's let her do her hair. She
Wow.
finished all her food. I'm like, man, she doesn't do that with me. But all
She's like,
right, it
I'm
made me feel
glad to
so
have
much
some
better.
time away from my mom. Whew.
I know, all she wants to do is feed me
And
and
ask
change
me
my
if I'm
diaper.
okay and tell me she loves me and like touch me all the time, like back off. I really do feel like sometimes, not always, but I think this is a bold statement, but I think children kind of enjoy, obviously like to an extent, like learning from other people, being around other people, because that's kind of how you socialize kids as well. There's something healthy in that, you know, because what does
Yes.
happen, and I know this because, staying at home mom is like they get used to you and your program and they start to really challenge you,
Yes.
right? And when there's someone new or a new situation, they're like, oh, new sets of rules. I have to abide by new sets of rules. This is what it is like to be a human being in the world.
Right.
Like, I think that there's something positive about that, right? Like, to an extent, whatever. And so it's funny you say, like, wow, she doesn't do that with me because she's like, I'm over my mom. Like, not really, but it's just more like, oh, cool, like
Yes.
a new environment. But also, it's a safe environment. She's still in the house that she's growing up in. Like, all of those things are really nice. Where,
Right.
I don't have the support that you do. I can't drop off my son with my sister or my in-laws. Like I don't have that. So I did have to
Right.
use school. And that was really scary for me as well because I'm like, I don't know these people. Is it going to be safe? And those are things I always constantly think about. But I have to then put a certain awareness of like, okay, when my son tells me things about school, I ask questions nonchalantly. I ask him how he felt, how people are treating him, and then I create relationships with his teachers to know, do I feel comfortable with them, right? So it's like a
Right.
new set of challenges that I have to go through because I would love that. You got a built-in system of like, oh, this is like
Right.
really nice. So, whatever. You let me know when you have to go because I know your daughter's coming. Um,
Yes.
so that's another thing. We're on a time restraint because, mom life. But yeah, but then now when I drop my son off, like he that kid's got to learn how to play with other kids,
Yes.
and he's an only child. And I know at your home there's other children. So there's that kind of stuff going on where with us, it's like it's me and his dad, and that's it. And he's like the only one. So it's like he's got to learn how to play. He's got to learn how to
Yes.
share. He's got to
That's
learn not to fucking hit and scream.
that's actually what we are trying. Well, what I'm trying to get my
Oh,
daughter to kind of get used to, because even
it's
here at
gonna
the
be
house,
forever. Yeah.
yes, it seems like it has been forever because she's so used to just mom and dad, kind of like, your son. And so here she'll play with my nephew for, I want to say maybe the longest, maybe an hour. And then she's like, okay, well, I need to go to my room because I need to be
I'm
alone.
done.
And she does. Yes, she'll come to the room and she'll close the door and I have a camera in here and I'll watch her, but she's enjoying herself here alone. She also enjoys her pride, which is kind of good because you know what? Once your son learns to play with other kids, he's also going to be okay by himself.
You
And
know,
I think that's really
yes, that's good too.
beneficial for when they grow up.
It's so
Yeah.
funny you say that because, yeah, like your daughter, my son, he'll go to his room sometimes and hang out and go play in there and like do his own thing. And it's really nice. And that's really fulfilling to me to know he has his own space. Even
Right.
though even though you're sharing your space, she still has a room to go to and be like, okay, I'm done. And for her to know, hey, this is my social tank, like I'm done.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to go recharge a little bit.
Yeah, and that's I think healthy. Like when I pick up my son from school, he's only there like a few hours and then we're back home. And then it's cool. He gets to have his little snacks. He walks around, does his thing, does his puzzles, whatever. But it's nice. Like sometimes when you're forced to be around people all day long, like that sucks. I know
Yeah.
about that because I grew up that way and I know you did too.
Right. But yeah, so this is
This
this is
is
my
just the
journey.
beginning.
Yes,
This is my journey.
me and my little sister always hashtag that when we, put our little life goals, only the beginning. And it really is only the beginning. It's
Yeah.
Stay tuned, guys.
Stay
Stay
tuned.
posted.
Yeah, so I think this concludes our second episode. I'm sure you've got to go. But I appreciate your time, Aurelie. I really just
Thank you. I
appreciate you
appreciate
kind of
yours.
sharing your story. And for next week, we will continue to share kind of that story and that ongoing saga of you starting school and you just kind of going on this mission of, going at it independently as well as myself. I've kind of got a lot of random things going on that I'd love to share with you guys. So thank you so much. We will see you next week for another day and time. We're trying to figure out a consistent day and time, but because things change, we change, and so we're flexible with each other.
Right.
So we will see each other really soon. And until next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.